Come on, honey. There she goes, she's out. Woohoo! Do we have drive? Hey, we have drive. And park. Nice. Alright, today I'm at my grandmother's house, and unfortunately she recently passed away and left my father and I her vehicles. So they've sat here for a couple of years, the Jeep being her daily driven rig, and the van being a vehicle that she used for doing flea markets. It's full of all her old flea market stuff, but with her health and everything, it sat for a couple of years, and the Jeep here hasn't driven for about a year also. And my grandfather passed away some time ago, and we also have his old Ranger as well. But today we're going to jump in here and just see if we can get everything fired up and moved out of the way. We need to clean the house out and everything, because now with them both being gone, that's the end of this place. So I spent a lot of time here. My parents worked odd shifts, so I spent a lot of time with them as I grew up. So I'm very familiar with this place, and it's pretty sad to see it go. And I remember being a kid spending a lot of time in this van with them, and on the weekends when my parents would leave them with them and they'd go do the flea market. So a lot of fond memories with this thing. But anyway, today we're going to try and fire it up. It's an 81 Chevy inline 6 engine. So sat for a couple years, completely dead here, I'm pretty sure. So we do have a jump pack, and our other Jeep here, you know, sitting, being a fuel injected vehicle, really doesn't like the you know, the fuel kind of gumming up on it and everything, which I assume happened because we can't get it to start either. So should be an interesting day today. First we'll jump ahead and try and see if we can fire the van. Being carbureted, it's pretty simple, so let's just cross our fingers. All right, so getting a look here at the old inline 6, and I'm not exactly sure, maybe it's a 292 Chevrolet. I'm sure someone will correct me. I'm not super familiar with my Chevrolet engines outside of the standard LS or small block, but anyway, I have worked on it in the past, maybe about 5 or 6 years ago for them. It now has an aftermarket temp gauge, and I've just went through the ignition a few times and rebuilt the carburetor. So hopefully after sitting for a couple of years, that's okay. With the use of our little jump starter here, which these are awesome. What I really like about this one in particular is you can plug it right into the wall to charge. You don't need any adapters that you could lose or anything. So if you're interested in these, I'll leave the link, but it's a pretty darn affordable one. It seems to work very well. So we're going to get her all hooked up today and really test her out, because we'll have to crank this over a lot to get fuel up to the carburetor to the point where it might even think about starting. So we'll just get this thing all hooked up and see what we can do. Alright, so this van has those nasty little side terminals, which again are quite a pain, but we got our positive hooked up, and then we can just hook our ground just to somewhere on the chassis that isn't painted. Just since everything's tied together, it should work just as well. Got Dad taking off the plates here, because obviously we'll have to transfer the title. So just to show you here, quick, that she is dead as a doornail. I don't have that ground hooked up. Nothing. So no lights come on the dash or anything. So now, swing around here. Hook our ground up. There we go. Not the best deal, but really that's the only thing it seems like it's going to work out. Hopefully our jump pack stays put. It's kind of hanging out here in a little groove. I think I'll see if I can get power, and then I'll tie it up so it just can't slide off the ground and smash into oblivion, because I do like that thing quite a bit. Prefer not to lose it. So, skinny thoughts here, trying to get in.
Circumstances prevailed.
Oop.
Had he been aware?
There we go. Looks like it's going to turn over. Now I'm going to wait for Dad to get out of the front here, as I don't want this thing to fall into drive and smash him to death, and we'll get that jump pack tied up so we're not going to lose it, and then we'll just jump in here and see if we can get it to fire off. Alright, I got the jump pack all tied up here, kind of with some vacuum line. If you can imagine, vacuum line really doesn't want to tie together very well, and it's all nice and oily anyway, so maybe that'll help, maybe it won't. We'll see, but we'll just give it a shot and see how it goes. But as you can see, this van is really nice and clean, especially for Iowa. If you're familiar with my channel, you know a lot of my stuff is old and kind of rusted out, or we battle a lot of rust. There's a little spot here, but really the old 81 looks pretty darn good. It's spent most of its life here, as long as it's been in my grandparents' possession in this garage, driven very minimally. So for the most part, it's about in the same shape it was when they picked it up. So just a normal cargo van. As you can see here, all of their stuff from the flea market from years past. Maybe a contractor vehicle at one point back in its life. So they bought it at a police auction, I remember. So maybe it was a truck rig, I don't know. Anyway, at least our carb linkage isn't stuck. Guaranteed there's no fuel in the bulls. I would fill it, but this doghouse is a son of a gun to get out, and we'll just see how far we get here just to start off. Man, she's sticky. Probably a little bit of rust in the cylinder rings. It is awful humid here. That's probably the first time it's cranked in a couple years. There she goes. Oh, that just hurts me to do that. I wish we had an oil pressure gauge. All we got is our aftermarket temp gauge. Not really good connection, it seems like. It's cranking her over. Well, I tell you what, we'll be standing here cranking all day at that rate with the mechanical pump. So I think I will take the extra effort here to pull our doghouse out and see if I can fill the float bowl with some gasoline and get it to fire off. So that little bit of cranking should have got some oil up to everything it needs to get to throughout the engine. I'm sure we'll have a bit of cranking yet to go. But anyway, I'm going to get this doghouse pulled out. Things kind of moved out of the way here and get a look down on the engine. Alright, so we went and got a little bit of gasoline and filled an old Aquafina bottle with it and punctured a little hole in the top here. Oop, if we don't dump it all over the engine, cause a fireball. We're just going to drizzle just a little bit of this into our carburetor to help get it primed up. Well, not really primed as much as just give the engine something to burn so that it can spin a little bit quicker and maybe run that mechanical pump and get the fuel up to it that much quicker. And if nothing else, we'll just see if it's even capable of starting today. So, and at the very least, get it to run a little bit on its own, because it just hurts me cranking this thing over and burning that starter up, and that is the last thing we want to do, is burn the starter down. So looks like we got good connection. I'm going to hold it wide open. It's probably good and flooded now, so get a good view on the fireball here if we have one. Look at that, it's got some life in her. Alright, we'll just keep giving her a little bit of fuel until that mechanical pump can get some fuel up to it. Pull her to the floor. Gonna grab our little adapter here before we lose it. Had a nice air cleaner on it. Definitely a lot of drag on this thing. Not the best ground for sure. The side posts, you can't get a real good bite on those either. To the floor. Might have to get a better bite on our jump pack. Oh, you can do it. Let me go, and I'm just going to let the starter cool a little bit, check some things over, see if I can get a better ground on this thing so we can get some more cranking amps through to the starter, and we'll check back. So anyway, I pulled the jump pack up in here, and with the convenience of the doghouse, I hooked right to the starter itself and then over to a nice ground right off the engine block. So we're making a good complete circuit. We still got plenty of Power left in our little jump pack. See if we can make the light not blur it out. There we go. So should have plenty to crank her over pretty good. We got a lot of crank time on this jump pack at this point, so definitely on borrowed time. So anyway, I'm gonna just try and shimmy on over here to the driver's seat and we'll try this thing all over again. But as you see here, it really cranks quite a bit faster now. So I think we got a good opportunity. We might get her lit off. So fingers crossed that the float bowl isn't stuck and the carburetor isn't all gummed up. We're gonna find out, I have a feeling today. So without further ado, let me hop over there and we'll crank her and see what happens. All right, we're back in business, all hooked up again. Here we go. Maybe we have gas up to the carb. Wow, look at her go. That jump pack's immortal. That was a good investment on my part. Definitely handy to have around, keep it in a vehicle. All right, she's reprimed. Wants to go. I hope we haven't lost our fuel pump from sitting all this time. That fuel has a long way to go from the back of this van up to the carb. I think this is maybe a Rochester style carburetor. I think it has an accelerator pump. I don't hear it doing anything. Can't even open the throttle the whole way.
Yeah, I think I remember we couldn't even get up to 45 with it.
Yeah, you've never been able to get the full throttle of the carburetor. That's crazy. Yeah, look at that. I can mechanically run it farther than the pedal can. Yeah, that makes a big difference. Yeah, I just don't see anything accelerator pump related. And even if there is, I bet you it's toast. But if it was getting up into the carburetor by priming it with the gas, you know what I'm saying? It would be able to pick it up and start running a little bit longer. So with that needle and seat, however it goes into the bottom, I can't remember. It's been so long since I did something with this carburetor. But if the needle and seat on the carburetor at the bottom are stuck or gummed up and not opening, we're getting fuel right up to it but not into the carburetor. Got a handy bashing tool. A few taps on that thing just in case the needle and seat is stuck in the up position. The old technical tap. See what we got this time. Not seeing anything. Gonna run out of gas here soon. If we go through this whole bottle, I guess we'll have to pull the fuel line off and see if we're even getting any fuel up to the carburetor. But I'm hopeful. I want to be optimistic about it. So as we crank the engine, basically this old school stuff has a mechanical fuel pump, so it's only pumping as the engine turns over. Now it's a diaphragm style, so it does a pretty good job of pulling from the gas tank if it's able to, and then you know, if it's still in good shape, and then it shouldn't be nothing to get it up to this point. So, but in keeping in mind that this is a van, it's got to pull it an awful long way from the back. And now we finally just got the engine cranking up to some decent RPM. I'm sure that diaphragm, if it is working, not petrified and destroyed, you know, this is it's probably its best opportunity to work here now. So we'll just keep cranking away until we see something come out. All right, I think at this point we're going to get our little clip off of our carburetor and see if we're even getting fuel up to the thing when we crank it. Alright, so we're going to let the starter cool off here just a little bit. If you can see in the middle of the screen, that is our mechanical fuel pump that rides off of, I believe on the Chevrolet, there's actually a lobe on the camshaft, and then a little push rod, if this is anything like the 350, which then actuates the lever arm on the mechanical fuel pump, pumping fuel, thus up to the carburetor, where then it is able to do its job as it's supposed to. But anyway, you know, we've been cranking quite a bit here, and I haven't seen anything come up to this point yet. Now, I have checked the gas, or excuse me, the oil for gas since we've started this process of cranking the thing, just to make sure that it isn't getting up to that point. And rest assured, before I started this whole process, I got to look at our overall level on the oil, which the oil is pretty clean, which is encouraging, you know, so I had no reservations about cranking the thing with it. But I haven't seen the oil level go up, indicating that we're just pumping our gas up into our oil, because, you know, with the mechanical arm, it is connected from the fuel to the internals of the engine. So I'm not seeing any issues there in particular where, you know, we have a punctured diaphragm that's causing that issue. You know, it's just hard to say at this point. So in a bit here, if we can't get it, I might unhook our fuel line, see if I can get fuel to run out. I'm just not sure yet. So right now we're just letting the starter cool, and then we'll go back to cranking, and hopefully we can get something up here. I did notice we have a fuel filter up here too, which may be petrified and hard and clogged and inhibiting us from getting fuel up there. So that might be our next point. But anyway, I'm going to let it sit for 15 minutes and we'll be back and we'll try and fire it up again. Still same scenario here though. I unhooked the fuel line before the filter, and basically in cranking it, I'm still not seeing anything come up. So I'm going to try and siphon fuel by sucking on this gas line, which I don't recommend, but it seems like I end up having to do this quite a few times. But it is nice for troubleshooting, as far as you know, if you can get fuel up to here in this way, and then cranking the vehicle, it doesn't pump fuel up to this point, then you know that your mechanical fuel pump is indeed bad. So as you see here, I'm going to suck on this line here for a second, and you'll hear the fuel actually gurgling down by the fuel pump. So I'm sure we do indeed have a fuel pump issue, but I haven't really given it a good go yet. So hopefully, you know, hopefully fuel does come up, and we're just continuing to prime the line. Again, it is a heck of a long line to prime up. All right, so we do have fuel up to the top. Now, Dad, if you would go and just crank the engine over a little bit. Not standing in the best place, but hopefully I see fuel come out of there, and then I'll be pretty encouraged. All right, hey. Yep, fuel pump works. So yeah, just all of that cranking, all that time, just to get the fuel up there. So, or maybe we broke a little vapor problem we had here by unhooking the line. So now we know we're getting fuel up to this point, so we can eliminate everything back from this. We will hook this now to the carburetor and hopefully crank it a little bit farther and prime the bowl up. So that would be very encouraging if everything's still in good shape, because we got a time schedule here and we got to get this thing out of here.
Do we have any fuel tanks that we could retrofit?
You mean just like put it higher so it gravity fed into it even?
Yeah, something like that, or even if you had to hook up an electric fuel.
All right, this is about my last go here. All my phones are out of battery. We've cranked the living heck out of my jump starter here. Gonna give it one more shot. Went down there and beat the snot out of the needle and seat assembly. I went and looked the carburetor up on Google and saw where that was located and just hit the heck out of it with a pair of pliers. So give it a little primer here. I don't think it has an accelerator pump still. I'm just not sure. I'm sure someone will correct me online here, but anyway, it's about the last go I got in her. Oh. A little bit of foot feed. We must be running on the van's gas. Must have been a stuck needle and seat, so it took forever to get the fuel up. And then once we got the fuel up, then it was clogged at the needle and seat assembly. Oh, hey, and old Dad found the Chevrolet thing from the back of it. So, wow, that's awesome. I would have never have guessed. Yeah, so I wonder if it just being clogged up where it couldn't allow the fuel pump to push any air, it then wasn't allowed to pull any fuel. So once we unhooked that and I siphoned it a little bit and then we cranked it, it was able to get fuel up to this point. And then once we bashed that needle and seat, it opened that up. And then, you know, it was kind of like the thumb over a straw effect where, you know, the liquid won't come out. You know, kind of similar ideology where with a barrier it couldn't move any air to get the air out to get the fuel up to it. So now it looks like we're in really good shape. Well, is it gonna idle? It's even idling. Check that out. She seems healthy now. Ooh, the parking brake is on. That's probably seized in place, but anyway, that's awesome. At least we're at this point. There we go. That dang jump pack is a champ. Man, it cranked the living snot out of this thing. So anyway, I think that'll do it for this video. We'll let the vitals all come up and make sure they're doing what they're supposed to, and we'll get this thing pulled out of here and, I don't know, wherever it needs to go. But yeah, amazing. Couple years and didn't take nothing. Away she went. Moment of truth here. Everything looks good. Come up to temp pretty good, 180 degrees. We're gonna try and drop it in gear and see if she'll move. Come on. There we go. Grab the gear. Kind of, maybe. Oh, are we moving? Holy crap. Do you have everything cleared out? Straight shot? First time seeing daylight in a couple years. Tough old Chevrolet. Looks like, and my grandma and grandpa used to pack this thing in here real tight. Looks like we're clear now. Ignore this temp light here, that sensor isn't even in. This is our only temperature sensor. This mechanical one. Oh boy. Power steering still works. Tight squeeze. Oh, come on, honey. There she goes, she's out. Woohoo! Do we have drive? Hey, we have drive. And park. Nice. Fuel gauge is doing some interesting stuff. Who knows if that's anywhere close to accurate. Sweet deal. Alright, so we got the van all backed out of the garage after its 2 or 3 year slumber. As you can see, it's a pretty darn clean old rig. My grandparents for the last 30 plus years only used it for the flea markets, and the flea markets only ran, you know, during the summer months. So, you know, suffice it to say, it didn't see a whole lot of salt. Although I'm sure it did see some in its day, considering it's got 130,000 miles or so. And it's on a repaint, I can see. You can see a few blemishes on it, I'm sure, just as I can here. But overall, you know, still a pretty decent rig, looks good. Not a complete eyesore other than being an ugly old van just by nature, but runs good, has a drive and reverse, so that's a good starting point. Given sitting so long, the engine runs extremely smooth, so that's very encouraging. We're holding a steady temp, and we do have our jump pack off of the thing now, and it's continuing to run. So considering the battery was completely dead to start with, that shows us that our alternator is probably good. So it looks like everything checks out to be in pretty good shape. Again, we owe a lot of our success here to the little jump pack that could. That was very impressive how long that could turn that over. I've never really beat it on it that bad, which I don't recommend, but you know, this one seemed to handle it okay. Can't be good for the longevity, but hey, if you're in a pinch, you can see that those things have a lot of power. But anyway, that's pretty much it for this video. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it, but we'll find something. It's too good of a rig to let go to waste.